Hey y'all, it's Fern. Welcome back to Leaven Kitchen for another Learn with Fern video. We're learning at Leaven again today. This time we're gonna go over the Estella Dough Sheeter. What's cool about the dough sheeter is, you know, you have your rolling pin, right? You're making biscuits, you're making pizza, you're making cookies, you gotta roll stuff out. This actually automates the process for you. So this is designed, it has a couple of different components here, right? You have one belt here, your left, my right, other conveyor belt here, your right, my left. And then from there, I want to show you a few of the components and what makes this machine run and run properly, right? So taking a look at the machine, you have a few different components. First of all, you guys know I like to preach and I like to talk about safety. You have your safety guards here. What's cool about this machine is that when it's plugged in and these safety guards are up, the machine's gonna automatically be designed to stop. That being said though, when it comes time to clean it, we still wanna unplug just to be safe, right? So again, we have our guards, we have also our height adjustment. So with our height adjuster, it has a few different options on here. And really what that means, it's just the height of the dough that it's gonna roll out for you. I always recommend starting at a bigger height, right? In this case, it starts at 10 millimeters, goes all the way down to 1 millimeter. And we'll take a look at that in detail here shortly. So you have your height adjustment here. And then from there you have right and you have left. And what the right and left does for you is exactly that. It's gonna move the conveyor belt right, or it's gonna move the conveyor belt to the left. And as you go, what I like to do is again, start at sort of the highest point that I can with my dough, and then let it do its thing back and forth, and I start going lower as we progress until I get to the height where I wanna be, right? So I went ahead and plugged this guy in, we're ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and demo some of that pizza dough that I was using earlier. Hopefully it cooperates with me and it flattens it. That way you can see this guy in action. So one thing we definitely like to do, or is definitely smart to do, is flour the board up a little bit. What that's gonna do is it's gonna help that dough not stick to the belt as you do your thing. That being said, and we'll go over this when we clean this, using too much flour can definitely make, when it comes time to cleaning, a little bit of a chore, but we wanna use a brush, we have scouring pads. I'll show you how to properly clean it. That way you can do your thing and not have to worry about that part. Make it simple for you when you're ready to go. So again, I have this guy floured up here. Got some dough here. It's kind of sticky. I'm hoping it doesn't stick to the machine for me. But we'll sort of just shape it here. And what we want to do, bring these guys down. By the way, one thing I didn't show you is that there is a little tray here. And what's cool about this tray is you can have it pre-fill. You can pre-fill it with flour. That way you're just grabbing as you're going. If it's, you know, if you have an assembly line type day, you're making a ton of biscuits, you're making a ton of product, and you don't want to have to go out and get your bucket and go back and forth each time, fill this guy with flour. Again, the key thing to make sure that you're aware of is everything that you use has to be cleaned, right? So you want to make sure that you go back, empty this, clean it properly, have it ready to go for the next time we're ready to use it. So we'll go ahead and just position that guy back in. We're not going to use it this time, but it just sits right in there, which is nice and convenient. So we have our guards down. I'm going to go ahead and set this to about an 8. Again, I'll show you a little bit closer here in a second. So an 8 is just 8 millimeters. Both guards down. There's also a button here, start, stop, for emergencies in case of emergency comes up. And then one thing I haven't talked about is the on-off switch. So there's an on-off switch on here as well. So we're gonna go ahead and flip this guy on, making sure it's lifted out in terms of our emergency stop button. And now we're ready to go. Guards down, height adjusted, and now I'm ready to go left, stop, right. You notice it's already getting a little flatter. Adjust a little bit. You can really do this to your preference, right? I usually do it 1 to 2 millimeters and then just go from there. And again, I'm gonna go left. I'm gonna go back to the right. And really depending on your recipe as well, again, this pizza dough is a little sticky. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little bit of flour up top here so it doesn't stick to the top of the machine. But again, depending on what you're making, you can sort of lift this guy, reposition it, flatten if you need to a little bit more, and then again, just keep going lower. It just really is all gonna depend on your recipe, what you're making, right? Go back, forth, And then what you'll notice, it's gonna flatten it up for us. Gonna go ahead and just take this all the way down to that 1 position, or to the 0 position, right? Make it as flat as I can go. And that's when you'll run into an issue. So that's why it's super important that you're doing this the right way. You start high, you don't get overzealous like I did there, because now all my dough has made its way and it sort of crunched itself up into the mechanism, which you don't want. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift this guy up, lift both sides up actually. Emergency stop's on and it's also off. I can't really readily get to my plug, right? So I'm not gonna unplug at this point, but I'm gonna do a few different things, making sure it's off, making sure my guards are up, making sure it's stopped before I handle the machine, right? So at this point, pull it up all the way up. It got stuck on there for me. It's gonna make a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. Just use some elbow grease, get some of that dough out of the way. And at this point, it just really, again, depends on your recipe. You can reshape. If you mess up, not a big deal. Just redo some stuff, reshape it a little bit, and now I'm good to go. And I know that I shouldn't get overzealous when I'm coming down with my dough. So again, I'm gonna go down to maybe a 2.5 here this time. Go ahead and put my guards down, turn it on again, and then I'm gonna go to my left and right. Stop, go right, and perfect. So this is really what you want out of your dough just in general. So a couple different things. Again, when you use this machine, you may have to reposition this as you go. Again, I'm really dealing with pizza dough that I probably over needed showing you the demo in the dough hook mixer, which is okay, but this really gives a good illustration on how simple it is to use this guy without having to use a rolling pin, especially if I'm making stuff in volume, right? Making a pie, whatever it is, I can use this machine to my benefit. And now we're gonna go over a few different things on how to clean this guy, how to clean it properly. So stay tuned for that. So now we're ready to clean the Estella Dough Sheeter. So a few things of note, right, is we want to unplug. I've already gone ahead and unplugged the machine. We of course have all of our components, right, our guard, our belt, all of those things need to be cleaned and cleaned properly. So we have a couple things, right, tools here. We have our sanitizer, we have our brush, which you'll notice is pretty much the same kind or the same brush that we were using with, if you watched our other video, our dough hook mixer. As this has those fine bristles, it's gonna make it nice and simple for you to get some of that flour off. A scouring brush or a pad actually helps really well as well. Again, it helps get some of that gunk off of there, that flour, that dough that sort of has stuck to the thing. And of course, when you are ready to sanitize, you wanna wipe it down with the paper towel. So really how I like to start this process is get all that excess flour off. You can use, again, the scouring pad. You might be able to see it on camera there, but you'll notice flour starts to fly off this guy pretty quick. Scouring pad also helps with these sort of metal components here in the middle. But again, super important that you're really getting into this belt, because you'll notice I've gone through it a few different times and we still have flour coming off of there. Again, this is why this guy helps quite a bit as well, because it allows us to go through, and again, there might be a little bit of residual flour from when we used it last. So you typically, again, real big tip there is probably have its dedicated brush on there. Don't really want to have different brushes, just so you can keep some of that dough and other gunk off of this brush, and it's just really focused on the belt. So again, it's going to take a few pass-throughs for you. You'll notice we still have flour jumping off of there. But you don't want to just sit here and sort of wipe it down. That's really not going to do it for you. This is more of a canvas type. If you can hear it there, I'm scraping it there with my nail. So again, scouring brush in general, is just going to get all that flour and that gunk off of there. Now you will notice it's a belt, right? So you're going to want to get the underside. One thing I like to do, so I don't have to sit there and plug and replug, is pull this up and then simply kind of like a treadmill, pull this down. And that's sort of just going around for me. What you want to be careful though is you don't misalign it, because again, like a treadmill, it could sort of misalign itself and not function properly. So again, you want to make sure it turns it, or you can definitely plug it back in, run it real quick. But what I'm getting at, the important part, is that you're not just simply wiping this guy down, you're actually scraping that excess dough, that excess flour right off of this pad. Once you've done all that, you've gone through it, it looks good to you, now you can go ahead and spray, making sure we're sanitizing, right? Wipe down with our cloth. So one thing with these machines is you'll notice there's a lot of these little crevices. You want to get, not necessarily every nook and cranny and polish it right, but at least get the dough, get the flour, get all the excess off of there to your best of your ability. So when it comes to down here, I usually like to do this part last, or if there's quite a bit of gunk down there, you can just spray this guy here. Got some excess flour, that's okay, just throw it in your trash. But again, just wipe all that flour down. Keep in mind the floor is going to be a little dirty, and that's okay. That's why we have brooms, that's why we have mops. It is what it is, right? I'd much rather get these guys a little bit dirty, because again, the flour is really going to be key. I'd rather get a little dirty and my recipe be okay than me sort of being careful, right? Or not wanting to clean too much and then my recipe suffer for it. Because really when it comes down to cleaning, as long as you're doing it right, as long as you're doing it efficiently, it's going to be nice and simple for you. Got a little bit of tough flour on here, that's okay, just use some elbow grease. Do your thing. And now this and the belt are ready to go. This next part, I'm not going to show you the other belt, it's just a repeat, right? A couple more things I want to show you before we let you guys go is you definitely want to spray the cage system here. Again, we're unplugged, so we're okay. The thing about flour and dough, that's going to get everywhere. It's going to get all over the machine. And now the main part I really want to talk about can be a little bit of a chore, and that's the internal of the machine, really where that pin is there. It's a metal pin. There's a couple different pieces, a couple different parts you actually have to take apart to clean this guy properly and the right way. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that. So at this point, we've cleaned our belt, we've cleaned the table up a little bit. There's probably still going to be a little bit of flour, but the hard part is done, right? The stuff that requires elbow grease, getting that guy nice and scraped down. So you'll notice in here, you have your height adjustment. With the height adjustment, that's really where that dough is hitting and it's compressing and it's going down, right? So a lot of dough in there, lots of flour. So you definitely want to go through here and wipe this down really good. And that's going to get your excess. All right, that's going to get all sort of that surface area and all that gunk off of there. What I also advise, right, is that we started up top, definitely clean the top part, clean the bottom part. Just make sure you get, again, all of these nooks and crannies, get that flour out of there, get that excess dough out of there. But also pull this guy down, spray it up here. And again, you want to make sure any dough, any flour, all the excess is out of there fully. Now on the surface, this guy looks good. We should be good to go. However, there is one main component that we really should clean, and we should take this machine apart to do it, because what happens, and when you don't notice, is that dough can get down into this little crevice here. So to do that, it can seem very, very intimidating, especially the first time you do it. Again, can't stress it enough, this guy's unplugged. But we're gonna go ahead and go down here a little bit. So when we've pulled this guy up here, we've stood it up, you'll notice there's a couple of these little key rings right here. Kind of a pain in the butt to clean on the surface, but once you start getting used to it, it's actually pretty simple. Again, it takes more time than anything else, but we wanna make sure these machines are lasting long, but also that we're cleaning them up properly. So as I did there, you pull each pull pin towards you, and that's gonna let go of these little hooks. What's super important is, like I dropped that hook there, is that we don't drop these little hooks, because it's super important for the machine to function the way it should. So we got our hooks, we're gonna put them off to the side. So once my hooks are off, a really good place to place them is up here where that flour goes normally, but that way I'm not gonna lose them, right? But now I'm ready to bring this guy on back down. And then there's a little mechanism here, there's a spring. You'll notice this little metal bar here, there's a spring on the outside of it, but you always want to pull that towards you. And that's going to allow this bar to come out. So a couple things about this guy, you don't want to lose this little spring. It's really simple to do, especially when you take it off. I've seen this spring bounce and go all over the place, and now you've spent 15 minutes looking for it. So don't just grab this guy off, just going nuts, take it off properly, or take it off, you know, use some patience, right? Make sure you don't lose this little spring. And in fact, I'll put it right in there where my hooks are so I don't lose it. So this mechanism actually is what helps make these rollers roll, right? There's a roller up here, a roller down here. And you'll notice these little screws here, that's where those hooks were hanging on that I just unhooked. So this guy, now I can, you know, if I want to, I can take it to the 3-comp sink and have it do its thing. But here I can just spray it, right? I can just spray it like everything else. Grab my rag and just clean it up nice and properly. Because again, what you'll notice is we have bits of flour in here, and those are the things you can't see. It looked nice and clean at the surface, but there can be bits of flour sort of hiding there underneath. So we'll go ahead and clean that part. We'll go ahead and clean right in here, clean it up well, and now we can get to those little nooks and crannies. Again, there is a roller on the bottom, there's a roller on the top, and then these guides sort of keep it in place and keep the rollers going back and forth. This one takes a little bit of force. I've actually unhooked the left side already, but here I sort of just pull up towards me. Again, this has its own hooks. And again, what you want to do is you'll notice there's some flour in there, there's some gunk in there. You want to clean that off, and you want to clean this guy off as well. But why is that important, right? Like, you're telling me that I have to use this guy, or when I use this guy, I have to take the whole thing apart. Yeah, right? We're dealing with food, right? We don't want, again, cross-contamination. We don't want old flour sort of staying in there and getting moldy and getting gross and getting smelly, right? That's not only going to help the machine as you clean it properly, but it's also, again, going to prolong the life of the machine for you as well. So by and large, the most intimidating part, you do have to do that on both sides, so give yourself some time when you're ready to use this machine. I guarantee you, if you're cranking out a lot of dough, cranking out a lot of things you have to roll by hand, you're gonna more than be happy to use this guy and clean it up when it's time to come and clean up. And I'm going through it slowly, but once you get the hang of it, really there's nothing to it, guys. It's gonna be nice and simple for you to clean and nice and efficient. You just have to get, like with everything else, it's gonna take some practice. So now we're gonna go ahead and put this guy back together. Again, you wanna make sure you don't lose your springs. You can always put them right back on just in case. Now what we wanna do here, put that back on, maybe. There we go. So now we're gonna go ahead and put this guy back together. What you'll notice here is you have these little springs, you have these little grooves. On the machine, you have these grooves right here, and it's really just a matter of matching each side up properly. So each piece has these plastic parts, and they're designed, again, to leave that throw in there, or leave that dough through there. So what you always want to make sure to do is the metal part pointing out, whether it's metal on the bottom, metal on the top. So again, we got our plastic pieces. Now what's key is that we line these guys up properly. And to do that, you sort of find your little hook here. Again, don't do what I'm doing. You want to sort of bring this guy up during this part. I've lost my hook. I'll go ahead and just reattach it, which is okay. If I line this up properly, it's going to catch that for me there. It's going to catch for me here. And now I can just sort of pull up, give it some force. You're going to hear a little snap on each side. It seems harder than it is, guys. It's really lining these guys up to where they're supposed to line it up. Use a little bit of elbow grease, and it snaps right back into place. This guy, same thing as what we did before. Here is what it's key that you have that little spring and you don't lose it, right? So you have two sections here, a little sort of pin, a longer pin. The longer one is where our spring is gonna go, and that's where you're gonna start. There's a hole in here where the spring goes. Lead that in there. So when it comes to putting this guy back in, again, you have your screws. This makes it simple. You know, it's gonna face bottom here. And again, that plastic part is gonna go towards the roller. So there is a little hole down here, kind of a little hard to see, but really what you wanna do is position these down first. Find the hole, you have the spring on, and sort of line it up. And once you're lined up, you'll notice it's gonna sort of go back and forth with you. The spring has caught properly. So now you'll hear that snap, you're good to go. And now we're ready for our final part. Pull this guy back up. We have our springs. So it's really hard to see here, but we have these little hooks. And again, this part is what faces towards you. There is a little metal bar. And really the main key here is that you grab this hook around the screw, and you'll know you got the screw because again, you can visually see it, but you can also now pull on that key ring. So when you pull on this key ring, it's designed to where it catches this little bar right here. Again, seems difficult, but once you get used to it, there's really nothing to it. That's gonna put it into place for you. And then once you get the hang of it, you can actually sort of feel for the screw in there. Making sure you have it the right way. I've got the screw. Now I'm ready to pull, and I've snapped in place, and I'm ready to go. So as you can imagine, definitely a great machine to use, but definitely takes a lot to clean it. And again, that's really the most important part. So once again, that was the Estella Dough Sheeter. Go ahead and give us a like, subscribe to our channel if you like this type of video. Again, I know this guy was a little bit involved. What I would recommend is sort of pause as you go, right? That way you can make sure you're taking it apart properly and you're cleaning it properly. Again, not only for safety and food safety reasons, but also for the longevity and the long life of your equipment. So again, guys, this has been Fern signing off here at Leaven Kitchen.